This video is for both cast and crew. If you're here for the crew call, skip ahead to the time code that should be on the screen. It should get you into roughly the part of the video where the crew call is happening. For those of you here for the casting, don't worry, we have plenty of roles to cast this time. Unlike last time, you'll be reading possible lines for these characters, not early drafts of episode scripts, mostly because most of these characters have not actually been written into an episode yet, but are planned to have some importance to the series. This time, we are casting a mix of canon Fallout Equestria characters, canon show characters, and OCs made specifically for this series. There is also a mix of main cast, recurring, and even a few bit parts thrown in. The characters up for grabs are Al Dante. He is a ghoul chef who has existed since the mega spells fell, so his voice should be slightly raspy since his vocal cords are beginning to rot. There's an optional Italian accent for this character, but it is not necessarily needed. He will become a main cast member as of episode 12 of this series, and will be in most episodes after that. Brine. To voice her, you will actually need two different voices. One should be a very extroverted scientist nerd, so think Twilight, but less bookish, more interested in being out in the field than cooped up in a lab, but they should still have a dose of social awkwardness. The other voice that you have to give for this character is a bad impression of Rarity. Sort of like the first voice that this character has, trying to sound like Rarity, but not quite getting it correct. I'd tell you why, but you kinda have to get the part first because spoilers. Homage, or homage, I'm not entirely sure how it's pronounced. She is the most notable pony behind the voice of DJ Pone 3, and is the future element of honesty. She was raised in 10 Pony Tower, one of the last bits of high society in the wasteland, but she doesn't really sound too snobbish as she did live a portion of her life out in the wasteland, and is not really a fan of how the 10 Pony residents act towards other members of the wasteland, so kind of a rebellious noble, if that makes sense. Kriggle Pop, or as I like to call him, K-Pop. He, in my series, is the next in line to be DJ Pone 3. He is a snobbish, rude, stubborn, and immature individual, acting spoiled most of the time, despite the fact that he is actually poor and an orphan, with his gig as the apprentice to Homage the only real reason he is still allowed to live in 10 Pony Tower. Velvet Remedy. She is one of the protagonists of the original Fallout Equestria fic, and she is a stubborn, slightly snobbish medical mare and somehow, despite her abrasiveness, the future element of kindness. Her voice should be very similar to an adult Sweetie Belle, but leaning more towards Rarity, I guess. She is a descendant of Sweetie Belle and an accomplished singer, so I'd prefer if you could also sing, because there might be some songs in the future. Calamity. Another of the protagonists of Fallout Equestria, he is a stubborn, impulsive, cocky Dashite, which in the context of Fallout Equestria means that he broke away from the Grand Pegasus Enclave, one of the main antagonists of Fallout Equestria, before they were defeated. Spoiler alert, I guess. He is also the future element of loyalty and special sumpony to Velvet. He is portrayed as having a southern accent, so I guess you can kinda sound like Big Mac when he actually chooses to speak, or a gender-bent AJ, depending on how much of a southern accent you want to give it. Spike, aka Watcher. This is not the baby dragon from the show. This is an adult, badass, giant-winged, eye-patch-wearing Spike. He has spent the better part of 2 centuries watching the wasteland and trying to find the future bearers of the elements of harmony. Like Brine, he will need 2 different voices. Spike the dragon and Watcher the robot. Spike is a deep, menacing voice, while Watcher is a more monotone, robotic voice. I can make the first voice into the second voice in post, but if you can do a convincing robot voice, it would help a lot. Lionheart. He is a ghoul and Derpy's special sum pony. He was one of Luna's guards and got turned into a ghoul by Pink Cloud, meaning he's fused to his armor. His armor is enchanted to always speak in the Royal Canterlot voice, so pretty much an always yelling, raspy voice. But please don't yell too loud. I don't want clipping in your audition. Just speak pretty loudly and I'll add like a echo or reverberation effect in post, so no need to actually audition while yelling for this character. Silverbell. Derpy and Lion's adoptive daughter. Her voice is basically a young Pinkie Pie, maybe a little less hyperactive, but pretty much that. Pinkie Pie! Well, this character should be pretty self-explanatory, though in the context of Fallout Equestria, she was the head of the Ministry of Morale, which was kind of like a big brother institution, kind of watching every pony. She was also hooked on a drug called Mentals, or Party Time Mentals, a variation of her own creation, that made her pinky sense become borderline precognition. Celestia. Another sort of self-explanatory character, however, within the context of Fallout Equestria, she might be a bit more depressed for several reasons I'm not going to get into, but most notably, having her mind and soul tethered to the security mainframe of the device that's supposed to control all the weather in Equestria. And so she had to sit back and watch 200 years of death and fighting in the wasteland without being able to do anything about it. Now, the last few characters are bit parts, meaning that they only show up in one episode unless for some reason they become really popular and people want them to recur. But for the most part, they are only set up for one episode appearances, either meaning they die in that episode or they just start in passing with the characters, so they talk for a bit and then leave kind of thing. Currently, I have 3 of these characters. Darkheart, a raider boss drug addict, and Crackshot and Buckshot, who are fraternal twins, one male, one female. There will also be plenty more bit parts in the future, so all auditions will be considered for bit parts, so even if you might not get the role or roles you're actually auditioning for, there's a chance at some point in the future I might contact you and say, hey, you want to play this one-off character? In the description, there will be a link to a Google Doc containing the various test lines for all of these characters, excluding the bit parts. Like last time, no knowledge of Fallout Equestria is actually needed to audition, but it is kind of an added bonus if you do know about the franchises, because then I don't have to explain too much things to you when giving you backstories for these characters. Send your auditions in either WAV or MP3 format. If I have to convert your file in order to play it, I won't be happy. Send them to nuclearhorseman@gmail.com. The subject should be the character or characters you're auditioning for, followed by the word audition. In the email or in the recording, please let me know what your fandom name is. I had to track a few people's fandom names down last time, and I'd rather not have to do that. The deadline is July 7th, 2018. Now for the crew call. Welcome to those who just skipped ahead to this part. We are primarily looking for writers and editors. To apply, click one of the links in the description below. There should be one for writers and another for editors. Knowledge of Fallout and Fallout Equestria is actually required for all roles, especially writers. Max, we are looking for about 2 people in each role, so put your best work forward. And I would like to note that we currently do not have a way to pay you. We do, however, plan to have a way to compensate you in the future. The deadline is the same as it is for the auditions.